All right, 1 year in on the Fox Live Valve Neo system. In this video, we're going to give you our long-term thoughts and opinions on what it's like to have electronic suspension on your mountain bike. Firm, open, firm, open. So what is Fox's Live Valve Neo system? Well, at its heart, inside the shock, there is a mechanism that takes readouts from two sensors on board to automatically lock and unlock the shock based on your given terrain preferences. We also have a dropper post that uses the Neo protocol, and we will get into that here in just a second. The shock is fed information thanks to two onboard sensors, one mounted on the front brake caliper and one mounted on the rear brake caliper. The wireless Neo protocol sensors read the terrain at 400 times a second, and the shock's magnetic solenoid can open or firm the compression circuit in less than 15 milliseconds. So as with all things that are electronic, there does come a period of setup and pairing. With the app that Fox has created, the process is pretty painless. Big buttons within the app you can click to pair. I did early on, after the launch, have some issues with the app not responding. Since then, there's been a number of updates and I've yet to have any issues with the app. One thing I have noticed, and it's pretty unique to me, I would say, is I've been using this shock on a bunch of different bikes that actually ended up fitting, so that was pretty sweet. You can't change a bike within the app. That shock has to be paired to this bike, so I can't pair the shock and create a new profile to have like different set tunes rather. So within the app, you have to go in and change the tune based on the bike you're riding. Not a huge deal. And speaking of changing tunes, within the app, there is endless possibilities of tuning options, from readout speeds, how fast it locks, decoupling sensors to create even more of a custom tune option. You can literally go so deep, you will get lost and start reverting back to the stock tunes. For me, I have ended up on the Shore tune from Fox. This is a preset tune that they created to give riders that ride steeper terrain a more supple feel. And on the firmness lockout switch, I've opted to kind of stay right in the middle, and I've found that has been a good balance of both traction and support when getting up out of the saddle. So as you might expect, the Neo shock and control system is a bit more expensive than your traditional analog shock. All said and done, you're looking at around $1,400 depending on where you live. Now, when it comes to battery life, on the actual battery on the shock, you're looking between 15 and 20 hours of ride time, and on the sensors up to around 12 months. Now, within the app, you can configure different settings to make sure that you're not losing battery while you're transporting the bike. For me, I haven't had any issues with the shock going dead on me, as it's easy to see the indication light of battery percentage on the shock and then also within the app. However, I have forgotten the charger on trips, and yeah, that sucks. But with all that said and done, if you're on a normal axis charging protocol, you're gonna wanna do this a little bit more, as they don't last as long as like the derailleur or seat post batteries. When it comes to shock options, Fox gives you two. You have the Flow X air shock like we have here, and then there's also a coil option in the DHX Neo. Both the air shock and the coil shock retain low speed compression and that firmness style with just low speed rebound. There is no high speed compression or high speed rebound yet on the system. When it comes to tuning options, both shocks receive the same options. Basically within that app, as I mentioned earlier, you can tune a variety of parameters. And if you're interested in learning more about the tuning and the development of these tunes, go ahead and check out our first ride video and article that we launched at Crankworks last year when this stuff came out. Well, I think that about does it for the details. If you want a deep dive, go ahead and check out the article. I think it's about time we get out on trail, and I'll run you through some of my thoughts and opinions while actually using the system, and we'll come back here for some closing thoughts at the end. Who is the Live Valve system for? Well, I think for one, anybody that rides a big travel enduro bike as their sole bike could really benefit in the climbing scenarios from the system. Woo! Woo! Also, riders that maybe want a little more help on the climbs, it definitely goes a long way into efficiency. And then of course the racer, right? Trying to maximize time on descents. Module I think Live Valve Neo is meant to live on is bikes specifically designed for Neo, right? So you can not worry about per se the climbing performance of the kinematics on the bike, but actually rely more on the shock. And we recently rode the Orbea Rallyon which is brand new, and it's a double bike, so it's a downhill and an enduro bike. And that bike on the enduro side solely relies on that live valve Neo system to make it an efficient climber. When it comes to descending on live valve, I'll admit I was the first person to be skeptical at allowing the electronics to read the terrain for me, but it is shockingly good. You can really fine-tune the parameters of the system, right? So if you want something that stays locked out longer, you can opt for that. You can also run it in different preset custom tunes by Fox, like I'm running in the Shore, which has a lower flat breakaway force. So basically what it's doing is adapting the sensors front and rear to say, hey, the amount of G-force needed to actually open up the shock is less on flat terrain. So you're erring on the side of traction. The speed at which the system reacts is freaking insane. Like, oh, sorry, I had to focus. So it's firm, open, just like, oh, it makes stuff like that so nice. So while you'd think the main benefits of the system is for climbing, I actually see more benefits descending, especially if you're looking to maximize your speed. You know, being able to have it firm up over sections of trail, pumping out of corners like that, it's firm right now, will really aid in how much speed you can carry. And I've spent quite a lot of time deciding on the tunes, messing up my own tunes, ultimately landing, not the line, ultimately landing on the Shore tune. And it just does a really good job balancing when you have traction and when you have support. Oh my gosh, it's so loose. So when it comes to climbing, as you'd expect, on kind of flat undulating terrain like this, you're gonna get a really nice firm feeling. Say there's like a dip in the trail, here we go, like that weird undulation you get from compressing and then firm. Like, so in that scenario, it noticed the G-force going down, it opened up, and then as my weight unsprung out of that compression, it firmed up on the landing because the trail was smooth ahead. And that, like, not only does it add like comfort, it just generally keeps your momentum moving forward versus up. And definitely as the trail gets steeper and you have that upward pitch going into the sensors, depending on your breakaway force, it's gonna stay locked out longer. Okay, I want to take a quick second here, talk about the seat post. Wireless seat post, it's pretty sweet. Removable battery, runs the same battery as the live valve shock, of course. You got a thumb switch here, and it is very, very, very adjustable. Okay, positives, right? All right, let me put it back down here. All right, so after almost a year of use, it's got some play in it. I don't know if you can see that. So it's got the side to side, but then annoyingly, it's also, so that noise drives me absolutely bonkers on the descents. Nothing you can do can quiet it down besides the service. Now inside the app, there is a little graph that shows you how many hours you have on the unit. And we're still about 10 hours on this post from needing a service. I would say it needs a service based on the play that's developed. I can't remember back when we first got it, how much play there was in it. But with that said, definitely one downside to this is it has gone kaput in terms of play and rattle. Still works great, like up and down, no issues there. It doesn't squash down when you put pressure on it, but it just rattles a lot. So one thing I haven't mentioned is shock adjustments on the shock itself. You retain the standard low speed compression, but you also get a new firmness dial, which basically allows you to fine tune how firm you want that magnetic solenoid inside the shock to make the shock lock out to. I've kind of naturally landed right in the middle. That for me finds a nice balance of pedal platform, but also openness when it is locked out for traction. You can opt to run that bugger real firm and it'll feel like a hardtail. Overall, living with this has been really nice. It's definitely aided a lot of sections of trail. All right, we are back. Thanks for joining me on that ride. I'm gonna go over some of my final closing thoughts, kind of wrap up things that I have some notes here on my phone that I wanna make sure I do not miss. Let's get some of the negatives out of the way. One thing the system introduces is a new way to charge batteries. It is a proprietary charger, and if you go on a trip and don't bring your charger and no one else has Neo, you do not have a Neo active shock. On the plus side, if you don't have a battery in the shock, it just defaults to open. You can still use low speed compression, so it's not a big issue, but it is something to remember. If you go on a trip out of the country, and I may or may not be speaking from experience, make sure to bring the charger with you. So when it comes to the app, they've pretty much worked out all the bugs. Every once in a while, when the system is active and the green light is on, it won't show that it's connected, and you kind of have to exit out and re-tap connect, and it'll come back to life, I guess, inside the app. It still is connected, so you don't have to repair it, but sometimes there's a lag of the shock being on and actually talking to the system, and I haven't quite figured out the trick to work through that other than closing out, coming back, tapping connect, and you're good to go. It's not something you really need to go into very often, especially once you get your tunes set. I'd say the app is just kind of lives in the background only if you want to change tunes based on your riding zone. So we really didn't talk much about the dropper post, as it really is outshined by the shock system. But with that said, it is really good in how little you have to press that button to get the thing to actuate. I know Emma, my partner, who struggles with droppers and thumb pressure and all that, she absolutely loves this, and the light tap is awesome, and the ability to micro tune how far you want the dropper to go up with each little tap is great. However, over the course of about a year of using this dropper post, it's developed quite a lot of play. It still is not ready for a service technically on the hours, but there is a fair amount of side to side and actually some up and down play on the actual inner shaft, which causes quite a bit of rattling, as you might have heard in the POV. But with that said, I am sure a service will fix that. It's just something that I would like to see last maybe a little bit longer. Last thing, kind of negative thing to touch on, is battery clearance. So this shock has a battery on the side of it. It is not approved to work with every single bike out there. So if you're looking to put this on your bike, make sure to do some research to make sure that battery will clear. I, in fact, put this on my Stumpy Evo, which has that side cross member. The battery did not clear, and because the frame is old and aluminum, I used a Dremel to make it work. So guess I'm keeping that bike forever now, because I'm not going to sell a bike with some Dremel marks on it. But besides the point, it worked great on that bike, and I really enjoyed it. But beware of battery clearance. Don't go out and buy the shock without doing any prior research. Okay, so more on the good stuff. When it comes to the operation of the system, it works very well, very quickly. It takes kind of the guesswork out of efficiency. One of the things that I've loved about it is, say you're rounding a smooth corner and then you have some roots ahead of you and you want to get the power down. As you stand up out of the saddle, the system's firm, and then as soon as that front tire hits the first root, the system opens up, so when you get into a place where you need maximum traction, it's there. Root guard ends, system locks back up. Another really cool thing I've noticed is on climb trails, when you have those kind of like dips and compressions where you get a little bob and rebound from the shock, on that compression, it opens up, and then as you're unweighting, it relocks. So as you land back out of that compression, and we're just talking like a dip in the trail, not a drop or anything like that, it firms up so you don't get that kind of wallowy feel on climbs. One of the cool things within the app is it gives you service life intervals, so you can visually see, outside of something very wrong with oil leaking out of the shock, when it needs to be serviced, and you can actually schedule services directly within the RideFox app as well. I mean, that about does it. I'd say the main thing to keep in mind here is how fast the system reacts, and it truly does what they say it does, with some nuances depending on your tunes. But if you wanted it to be lightning fast, rock hard, you can set it up in the app how you want it to be. If you're more on my side, where you're looking for maybe some more traction on that lockout circuit, you can completely tune it in there and how you see fit. Well, that about does it. Thank you so much for tuning in to learn more about Fox's Neo system and our long-term views. If you have any questions that I did not cover, go ahead and drop them in the comments below. If I don't have an answer, I will be sure to reach out to Fox to get those answers for you. And yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this. If you've not yet subscribed, please do so. It really helps us out. And until next time, we'll see you out on the trails.